on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, we've got the biggest local and international stories from Channel 10's The Project promoting criminality to mass protests in Brazil as the leftist government cracks down on free speech. And we'll get the inside word on an enormously significant case in the federal court, Giggle versus Tickle. And as always, plenty of lefties losing it. Tonight featuring whatever this is.
So when I say Joe, you say Biden. Joe, Biden, Joe, Biden. When I say Joe, you say Biden.
But first, right now the footy media is having a mass meltdown, flailing themselves silly, arguing that a Port Adelaide player should not only be fined heavily but also suspended for using a homophobic slur during a game, which he has owned up to and apologised for. Now, this is the same AFL media that has done its best to bury a truly significant scandal, a drug scandal involving a sophisticated scheme to dodge WADA penalties. So we've got AFL players indulging in banned illicit drugs, taking secret tests and even faking injuries to avoid World Anti-Doping Agency penalties if they test positive on match day. Basketball great Andrew Bogut summed up the saga beautifully when he said anyone with half a brain can see why they've done it. They're obviously tried to move the chess pieces around to navigate a WADA policy they have agreed to abide by because the carrot is federal government funding. Let's be clear here. The AFL has been complicit in dodging not only the spirit of the WADA rules, but is guilty of engaging in disreputable tactics to ensure players on banned substances do not test positive on match day. You know how badly the AFL has behaved when the founding president of WADA, Dick Pound, compares its conduct to that of the East Germans in the 70s and the 80s. He said, so the result was no East German, no Russian ever got caught doping because they were pre-tested the day before the competition. So this is using old Soviet techniques in 2024. Yet the bulk of the AFL media seem largely uninterested in this enormous scandal. Perhaps they feel their role is PR for the AFL, not scrutiny. Any claim that cocaine is not performance enhancing is absurd. It is on the ban list for a reason. Even through the week, it assists players to keep their weight down, to train harder, to train faster. Of course, it's also enormously dangerous to be training at the elite level with cocaine in your system, but clearly the AFL puts player welfare a long way behind protecting its image. The league can't say it wasn't warned. For more than a decade, in the pages of the Herald Sun and on air, I've been writing and speaking about the AFL's deliberately flawed illicit drug policy and how it's designed to hide illicit drug use, not stop it. The AFL's claims of putting player welfare first are self-serving codswallop. But sadly, the bulk of the sycophantic footy media were too busy repeating league propaganda and obsessing about relatively trivial outrages over a genuine crisis in integrity and fairness. You know, the AFL loves to preach, probably more so than any other sporting code. It loves to preach to the masses about everything from gender to LGBT rights. It even thinks it's entitled to tell us how to vote in a race-based referendum. They heavily backed the divisive Indigenous voice. But this is an organisation that can't even run its own competition in a clean and transparent manner. Let's bring in media writer for The Australian, Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, let's start with Channel 10. Their program, The Project, gave a platform to a social media influencer called Purple Pingers to give rental advice to young people. But instead he told those struggling to find a house, to just go ahead and take one that looks abandoned.
On the census note, we had 10% of all housing stock vacant. But I asked people for less than 48 hours and I've already got over 300 responses. I'm not the government, so I don't have the resources to ask everyone. But yeah, if you've got like over 300 places that have been abandoned for more than 2 years, some up to 20 years, I think it's a problem that exists.
Are people actually moving into these homes?
Yes. Not from the public ones, though.
So not from the ones you've listed?
Yeah.
So it's happening, what, privately, word of mouth or something?
Yeah. Like if someone needs a house, they can reach out to me and I can send them an empty home.
What sort of people are moving into these homes? You're seeing families with kids and...
It's mainly people just experiencing housing insecurity, and that can look like anyone.
Where do I start? This is just appalling. To have someone on the program promoting people's properties being taken, encouraging squatters to move in. Really, this is the solution to the housing crisis?
Oh, it was pretty shocking, Rita. I thought the project giving him plenty of oxygen here. He had a T-shirt. On the T-shirt it said, "Good people disobey bad laws." And then he was asked, "Is that what you think here?" And he said no comment. I mean, really appalling stuff, and encouraging people, call me up.
Is that not a criminal offence to illegally enter someone's property? I just can't believe...
Well, he's saying if the doors are unlocked, you can enter. So it's not actually a locked premises, so just walk in. And he's saying he can find you these properties, you know, all around the place. But Rita, imagine if you've got a property...
Okay, so if the doors are unlocked, you can enter someone's property?
You can just walk in and squat. He's saying you're allowed to squat. But Rita, imagine if that was your property and you've got someone just squatting in there. This is really irresponsible. He's telling people to contact him and he'll hook them up with properties.
And these squatters, will they be paying, I don't know, the rates, the land tax?
Well, he said they don't have gas, they won't have, you know, utilities. They'll just camp out there. I mean, this is just ridiculous stuff. And the project really didn't do a very good job of holding him to task. Mind you, our colleague Steve Price was on there, and thankfully he knocked some sense into them and asked a pretty tough question.
He made the claim that we saw that in the clip that on census night 10% of houses were empty. That doesn't mean they've been abandoned. You could be at next door's house on census night. You could be taking your kids to a sporting event, or there may be 100 reasons. You might be overseas on a holiday. You may be
staying at your partner's house, or
whatever you're doing. Really, it's nobody's business. If you've got a property that you have paid for, that you're paying taxes on, that you are responsible for, to suggest that if there's no one living there, it's just up for grabs. I mean, that's not how a civilised country behaves.
It's shocking, Rita. And the fact that the project didn't really call him out on this, I mean, in a way, it's endorsing it. They should have
gave a platform to it. They put it on national free-to-air television. And I've got to say, this sort of nonsense may start off with good intentions, even if you want to take the kindest attitude to this craziness. But let's have a look at where it ends up, because in places like New York, where the Democrats rule, the squatters have more rights than the homeowners.
Why can't you just change the locks?
Oh, I will be arrested instantly.
They turned off the hot water and then reported that they had no hot water. It's a $250 fine per day, up to $15,000, punishable by 5 years in jail.
So here you are. You have to pay the upkeep of the house.
Right.
And not getting any rent?
I'm not getting any rent, and I'm paying the gas and electric every month.
4 stories repeated over and over and over again by irate and often unwitting property owners, worry lines marking their faces, who came to City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino's office desperately seeking help. Hong Chen has spent thousands trying unsuccessfully to get the squatters out of this home in Mazpath. John Sokran using his pension money for expenses on this College Point home he hoped would provide retirement income. And Susan Mascara, who has used up her savings paying for 7 years of upkeep on this Bayside home she inherited from her mother.
I'm in debt. My credit cards are pretty much maxed out.
Now let's go to the fallout from the Taylor Orbach episode in the Bruce Lehrmann saga. It's immense. Channel 10 perhaps are regretting reopening this defamation case. Stephen Rice writes in The Australian, Channel 10 effectively kicked an own goal when it reopened the case to the one-man wrecking ball bent on revenge. He went on to say it should also have been patently obvious to the network that the unguided oil-back missile would wreak vast collateral damage on many others, including at least one 10 was honour bound to protect. Sophie, this intervention not only embarrassed Brittany Higgins, a lot of her private correspondence has now been made public, but it smeared several Seven journalists and also a leading, well-respected media lawyer.
Well, that's right, Rita. Pretty much everyone who's gone near this story has come off second best. And I don't think, going on what Justice Lee said last week before things wrapped up, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically that the Taylor Allback was on a bit of a mission here to attack people he used to work with. And I think some of the testimony in that court case was heavily rejected by Seven. We must point that out. Some of the claims Taylor was making were not proven with evidence to back it up. This is a giant mess, but we're all waiting to see, Rita, what Justice Lee will hand down in his judgment.
Well, it's going to be fascinating, and you're right, so many people have been damaged by this saga, even people who sort of, have a bit of distance between themselves and this story. And some of it really quite unfair, because to have allegations aired and you've got no opportunity to respond, that just seems really grossly unfair to me. Now, quickly, let's talk about former Victorian Premier Dan Andrews, who's found what appears to be an advisory company. He's got his own advisory company now called Wedgetail Partners. Oh, it's only 4 months since he retired. I wonder if the name Wedgetail is a tribute to all those eagles that are killed by the wind farms Dan Andrews loves so much. Under the Ministerial Code of Conduct in Victoria, he's not allowed to be a lobbyist of any type for 18 months. So what's he doing in this role? Do we know what sort of advice he's giving and what sort of clients he's got?
We don't have those details yet, Rita. They are not shared, and clearly there's strict rules around this. But look, let's just remind viewers, Dan Andrews is on a $300,000 annual pension since he stepped away from politics. This will just be a little side hustle in my view. He doesn't need to worry about money. He is set for life. But it is interesting to see that he's just laying the foundations, and I think there will obviously be more to come on this, Rita, once that 18-month period clears.
Now, I know you're a footy fan, so you would have taken note of the furor this week and last week, really, around Kane Cornes. Bulldog great Luke Darcy weighed in. He really embarrassed himself a bit, trying to ambush the Channel 9 footy show host Kane Cornes during a segment on Triple M. Let's have a look.
And I've been wanting to ask you this question, and I'm not being critical, so please take this the right way. You've been probably more mean-spirited and nasty to people than anyone in the history of our industry. Do you feel like, and that trade obviously gets you paid well, you look like someone who doesn't want to bump into people. And I find that a little bit sad. There's a view in the community that you've taken an edge that very few people have done before. And I'm not being critical. That's a role you take, and people like Piers Morgan do that in the UK and make a lot of money for it, and there's always a role for a Steve Price in the industry. I'm just wondering whether that trade of being that role, and that's the role that you play.
Oh, just thank God he wasn't being critical there. All this criticism seems to stem from one particular segment, and that's all Luke Darcy would offer up as an example of what he was talking about there. And it's about a bit of fun they poked at Trent Cotchin. Let's have a look at that particular clip, and you tell me whether this deserves someone's character being assassinated.
So I was actually jealous of how they are at the cutting edge of analytics. Let's have a look at Trent Cotchin.
Hey guys, Trent Cotchin here. We're going to run through a little bit about what isn't quite working for the Pies, but also how good Sydney are going with regards to their team defence and their contest wins.
Well, I want the best product here.
Okay,
I want us to be at the cutting edge, and I want us to be the best. And sorry, it's a blatant rip-off, but I just had to go there.
Hi guys, Kane Cornes here. Just wanted to show you what isn't working for Hawthorn at the moment. So let's take a look at the vision. In this example, you can see James Sicily with the football, and he kicks it to his teammate.
It's amusing. I don't know know what the problem is. I mean, really, the man was a football star. I'm sure he can cope with a little bit of fun criticism like that. A lot worse things have been said about people in the media. What do you make of this ongoing feud?
Well, Rita, I'm sure Trent Cotchin is a lovely chap, but commentary like that is pretty boring. I almost fell asleep watching Trent Cotchin.
That was, and look, Kane Corns' point.
Kane Corns is very funny and he's having a joke. You know, it's all pretty lighthearted. And for Luke Darcy, who I thought was normally quite sensible, to really go for him was totally unwarranted. And I think a lot of footy fans watching Trent Cotchin would be quite bored by commentary like that.
Well, yeah, I thought that was really more of a analysis of the broadcaster there. You know, come up with a bit better content for your audience. But it was all in a bit of fun to try to blow it up into something that was ugly and then, you know, Kane Corns has no friends because of this sort of work.
Ridiculous.
And then to bring up, I think he brought up Steve Price as an example of someone who's an agitator. I mean, really? Really? Sophie Ellsworth, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you, Rita.
Today, women's rights went on trial in the Federal Court of Australia with the landmark case Tickle versus Giggle. The case revolves around a transgender woman named Roxanne Tickle who had their profile taken down by the female-only social app Giggle for girls because they are not female. Tickle is now suing Giggle for discrimination. This case will be the first time gender identity is measured against sex as a protected attribute under the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984. Rachel Wong of the Women's Forum Australia was at the Federal Court today and she joins me now. Rachel, what can you tell us about what happened today in court?
Hi Rita, thanks for having me on. So this morning was fairly procedural in that both sides gave their opening statements, objections were made to evidence that had already been filed. Each side basically put forward the sort of crux of their case. You know, we heard from Sal's lawyer that she excluded Roxanne Tickle from her app because he is a man, so on the basis of sex, which she is entitled to do under the Sex Discrimination Act. Because of the special measures that Act has, which says that lawful discrimination can be made if that's needed to achieve substantial equality for women. Roxanne Tickle's lawyers have said that actually those measures don't apply in this case because Roxanne Tickle is a woman. And so here we have the crux of the case, whether or not Roxanne Tickle is a biological woman under the Sex Discrimination Act. And so that's sort of where we're at right now. I mean, to be honest, I didn't hear as much as I would have liked because, like a lot of other people, I was sort of stuck at the door of the courtroom. The courtroom was overflowing today and there was not enough provision made for people who wanted to attend to actually hear the hearing. So there weren't enough seats. The trial isn't being live streamed, which, to be honest, is actually quite shameful because this is a critical case for women's rights, both nationally and nationally. And they haven't made enough provision for people to be able to hear it. And I just think that's really, really unfortunate, particularly given that this is supposedly a case in the public interest, which is why Roxanne Tickle got such a significant extension of time to bring the case in the first place.
I agree 100%. I think there should be complete transparency because this is so significant. It has all sorts of consequences. If Sal Grover loses, she's indicated she's going to take this to the High Court. That's not easy. It's not inexpensive. It's a huge weight on her shoulders, this case, and I do really feel for her. She's a new mum. She shouldn't be in court fighting for her rights, if you ask me.
I could not agree with you more, Rita. Up until this point, Sal has had to raise $500,000 basically to prove that men aren't women. Like, that's literally what she's fighting for, to protect female-only spaces, which, to be honest, should already be protected. And if she ends up having to appeal the case to the High Court, then that's going to be significantly more. So she's herself had to expend a lot of resources. Members of the public had to do the same. There's, a lot of money being spent on this case, which, to be honest, she shouldn't have to be fighting in the first place.
Well, we've often said about the Australian Human Rights Commission that the process is the punishment, and from what you've just described, that seems to be the case. Just the funds you need to be able to fight for your rights is astonishing. Before you go, I want to ask you about the e-Safety Commissioner. There are calls for her to step down after revelations she once worked with the transgender man, a radical trans activist who she has sought to protect from scrutiny by demanding certain critical posts about him be removed. Julie Inman-Grant threatened Elon Musk with a massive fine, close to $800,000, if he doesn't take down the post. Seems to be a warped priority when we've got so much content online that is as horrific, including teenagers using sites to showcase their violence. But can you tell me about this position of the e-Safety Commissioner and how it came about and what its purpose was? Because from what I understood, it was supposed to be targeting child exploitation, not what we're seeing today.
The e-Safety Commissioner has censored this tweet of Billboard Chris, and from what I can tell, it's because she doesn't like the arguments that he's been making about gender ideology, about the need to protect children and all of that. And so it was already concerning enough that she had censored the tweet, that we'd found out she'd censored it, we'd found out it was a pattern of censorship which she has been applying to gender-critical tweets. But now to find out that she has some kind of relationship with Teddy Cook, the person that the tweet was being made about, in terms of actually working alongside him, that's very, very concerning, because it seems a little bit like a situation of mates protecting mates. And not only is it's not any mate, this is Teddy Cook, who works for ACON, who is the key organisation in Australia which is pushing gender ideology throughout institutions, throughout media, throughout government, throughout education. And to be protecting this person in particular, which it seems like what she's doing, is very disturbing. And if that's the case, an investigation needs to be made, and I would support those calls for her to resign if it comes out that that's what's happening.
Yeah, hugely powerful body, you're so right, particularly in the media. So much of the narrative you see pushed in the media comes from the preaching of that organisation. Rachel Wong, thank you so much for your time this evening. Still to come, America's two-tier justice system strikes again with a great-grandmother facing prison while gangbangers go free, and a massive edition of Lefties losing it. Welcome back. Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And let's start, Lefties, with the ladies of The View, and just consider how unhinged, how divorced from reality you would have to be when even Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg have to step in to correct your climate scaremongering. Here is the dangerously dim Sunny Hostin connecting an earthquake, cicadas and the eclipse. Apparently it's all because of global warming.
We've got a solar eclipse. We've got the earthquake. She ran down the hallway.
The rapture is here.
The rapture's here. And then also I learned that the cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
Cicadas.
Although I love
for the first time in like
no.
100 years.
No.
Two different. Well, this is what I read. Two different times.
Two different kinds of cicadas.
Yes, two different times are coming.
The good cicadas and the bad cicadas.
But for the first time in many, many years.
No, every 17 years this happens.
Well, that's not what I read, but maybe. You know, maybe you know better. But
in a way,
say all those things together would maybe lead one to believe that either climate change exists, or something is
returning. Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground.
It happens, and the eclipse. They've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen.
When Joy and Whoopi have to step in. That's how bad she's going. Now, staying on the eclipse, this next video caused an almighty tantrum from the left because it's from Donald Trump. Here is a hilarious little video posted by President Donald Trump to mark this momentous occasion. Love that. What are they so worried about? Now to some truly cringe-worthy content, and I apologise in advance for what you're about to see.
Time to rise, we're rising. So when I say Joe, you say Biden. Joe, Biden. Joe, Biden. When I say Joe, you say Biden. Joe, Biden. Joe, Biden.
Joe Biden, he's a man who takes a stand for the family. With a plan, this is a man who can it be? He's the one to get it done. Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. 2008.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Stop. There's more lefties whose dancing ability is as awful as their political opinions, and they insist on filming themselves and putting it out there for me to share with you.
Oh yeah, everybody, Pennsylvania!
Yeah!
Crosstown traffic! Pennsylvania, you have to get out and register to vote, and you have to vote for Biden-Harris.
Harris, crosstown traffic.
Because that other guy, the orange man, like this, he is going to take away your Social Security, and a lot of you are.
No, he's a bad.
No, he's not. That's right. Now to this youngster who's disturbed by burrito trucks because of, I don't know, cultural appropriation, which is apparently evil. Enjoying the foods, customs, music of other cultures is horrific and racist in 2024.
What kind of things make you not necessarily as proud to be American?
Assimilation of a lot of cultures. Like there's a food truck that I got a burrito from, and I got salsa, and it was like tomato juice. And so I was like, okay, how are y'all gonna use someone's culture and then appropriate it?
Let's end on this positive note. Here is a mum teaching her children about the evils of socialism.
Hey, Ev.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay you for your chores today, okay?
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to have to tax you, though.
Why?
Socialism.
Oh.
Hey, Scar. Here's money for doing nothing.
America's two-tier justice system has struck again. The Democrats weaponising the justice system to attack and even imprison their ideological opponents sees BLM writers go free, but a grandmother is facing a $210,000 fine and 1 year in jail for praying at the Capitol building and spending just 10 minutes inside where she didn't assault anyone, she didn't steal anything, she didn't damage any property, she just walked around.
That my own country's treating me like a criminal. It's because I believe that they stole the rightful president. And just standing up for my country, it makes me a criminal. And it's just not right.
She was convicted of 4 federal misdemeanor charges relating to January 6. Of course, when you have a jury pool in DC that voted 96% Democrat, then a conviction is pretty much assured. Author and commentator Shamika Michelle joins me now. Shamika, do you see this as a miscarriage of justice?
Oh, Rita, absolutely. And I could talk about the way Democrats are intentionally destroying America by letting criminals roam free. But let me make it more personal. In December, my uncle was murdered. When we met with the district attorney recently, we found out not only was this someone who had served 15 years for murder before, he was actually out on bond for shooting someone a year earlier. So he never should have been walking the streets at all. But this is what's happening in America, across American cities, and it's happening so much. We have no other choice but to go to the polls and make the right decision because they are intentionally destroying America. And it's really sad what's happening to these people over January 6th. They're political hostages.
Oh, I can't believe what you've just told us. That is just so shocking for you and your family. And you're absolutely right that that man should have never been free, involved in a shooting and out on bond. Have they at least acknowledged that that was a terrible miscarriage of justice that's cost your uncle his life? What's the latest with that particular case?
So the trial hasn't started yet, but the DA that we met with did say, they don't understand why he was out to start with. So now I'm going through to kind of figure out why the previous judge reduced his bond and which bail bondsman or how he actually made it out. Because to me, if you're already someone who has served time for murder, and then you shoot someone else, it's clear that you haven't been rehabilitated. So I have no idea why he was even allowed to be on the streets, except that this is intentional.
This is just an absolute tragedy. I'm so sorry to hear that. Let's talk about school closures in America. You had schools close, quite a few of them yesterday, for the eclipse. I mean, this just sounds absurd. Is America struggling to break the bad habits of COVID? Because it was unique in school closures that seemed to last a lot longer than much of the developed world. You were the only country that was masking toddlers in blue cities. And so I guess closing schools for an eclipse doesn't seem all that strange in America.
It doesn't seem all that strange, especially when last month the schools here closed because of high wind. It was supposed to be a very windy day, and so they decided that the kids should stay home. Ever since COVID, and they have the ability to actually learn virtually or to pretend like they're learning virtually, they closed the schools for any simple thing. And so no one should be shocked at the amount of kids in America that are reading below grade level, that do math below grade level. Again, this is something that has been specifically designed to make us fall behind and have to depend on the government and just be last in everything that we do, because this is what's happening. And not only do you have kids being out of school all the time, the teachers that are there are nuts. All they are concerned about is gender and sexuality. They're not even coming to school to start with, teaching these kids reading, writing, and arithmetic. Our kids are so far behind, it's embarrassing.
Now, I did like this take from Roseanne Barr on the solar eclipse. She tweeted, "I'm not scared of the eclipse. I'm scared of 4 more years of commies." She's still very funny indeed. Now, we've got a segment on this program, Shamika, called Lefties Losing It. And this next clip certainly qualifies for that. One of the stars of the comedy sitcom Blackish has shared her crazy fevered dreams about a second Trump presidency. Let's have a listen to Jennifer Lewis.
As soon as he takes the oath, he will have generals walk down the steps of the Capitol. He will take a hammer and break the glass where the Constitution is, and he will tear it up in our faces.
What am I listening to there? Is that some sort of a, I don't know, dark comedy skit I'm not getting? Or is she doing rehearsals for a play? Surely that is not her serious, honestly held opinion.
You know, she's serious, but what's so funny is these are the same people that claim that Black people aren't even, living by the Constitution, or the Constitution wasn't written for Black people. So that's really how you feel. Why would you be upset if he got rid of the Constitution to start with? Because for years you've been saying the Constitution is not for Black people. It doesn't protect Black people. And so they've been trying to change the Constitution for years. In this same video, she says she knows what mental illness looks like. And maybe she does, because she has to look in the mirror every single day. And so what she is saying is absolutely crazy. But this is what's happening. When I say, Rita, that all of the Democrats have their people in place to come and wrangle people back in because they are afraid that more people are waking up and saying life under Trump was a lot better than what we're dealing with. They are out in full force saying, hey, you can't vote for Trump because we know they want us to vote for a man who doesn't even know he's in the world. But this is what's going on, and it's absolutely crazy.
Well, if the polls are right, that black vote is finally fracturing. It's normally 90% plus for the Democrats, but Trump has been successful in breaking it apart a little bit, but we'll see if that actually eventuates come the election. But they are desperate to ignore Trump's rising popularity, particularly in those swing states, and they're trying to pin anything bad going on in America on him and his supporters. Even crimes committed in Democrat heartland, they're now blaming the TikTok trend we've seen of these men randomly punching women in the face. They're saying this is due to the male rage fueling MAGA. I mean, I thought that piece, Shamika, was, comedy. Again, I thought that was a Babylon Bee take, but they're serious. These are the types of people who probably still believe MAGA types beat up Jussie Smollett.
Oh, of course. They believe that so many people just don't pay attention and all they do is read headlines. And if the Democrats say, hey, let's put this on the news, let's put this in newspapers, then this is what people are going to believe because they aren't going to do any research, nor will they lean to any type of logic. And honestly, I think if you are still voting Democrat with everything that we've seen, you don't have very much common sense to start with. So I'm not surprised that they would actually fall for this. But I mean, again, I can't believe people fell for Joe Biden getting over 80 million votes. We know that's not the case. And I can't believe people wake up every morning thinking that he's in his right mind, but yet there are so many people that still believe he is actually running our country when we know he is really just a puppet and someone is behind pulling the strings.
Shamika Michelle, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for your time tonight. Still to come, a deeply concerning survey from the UK shows just how far Hamas denialism has spread. Scotland strains under the weight of its hate crime laws, and we'll bring you the latest from Brazil, where the people are rising up against leftist tyranny. That's after this. Welcome back. It's 6 months since Hamas stormed into Israel and murdered, raped and kidnapped hundreds of Israelis in the October 7 attacks. It was a sickening massacre that shocked the world. Well, most of the world. There are a frightening number of people who think Hamas were, if not in the right, then provoked into attack. And they simply refuse to believe these terrorists raped and murdered innocent civilians. A recent survey of British Muslims conducted by the Henry Jackson Society revealed 40% of university-educated Muslims under 25 years of age believed the terrorist organisation did not commit the atrocities carried out on October 7. Nearly half of all Muslims living in the UK, 46% to be precise, sympathise with Hamas. And an overwhelming majority of them, 76%, believe Hamas did not commit murder or rape on October 7. And it must be noted, 38% of the wider public also believe this. Author and broadcaster Ollie London joins me now. Ollie, just 1 in 4 British Muslims believe Hamas terrorists committed atrocities on October 7. How can they ignore all the overwhelming evidence we've seen in the last 6 months?
Well, it truly is very alarming and shocking to see this. And we have seen thousands of young university-educated protesters taking to the streets every single Saturday, making central London a no-go zone for Jewish people. And we've seen, anti-Semitic chants and slogans from the river to the sea being chanted at every single protest. And it is very, very concerning. And one thing is the lack of education. A lot of these people are getting their information from TikTok. TikTok is fueling pro-Palestinian propaganda. And also Iran and Russia are funding this propaganda to turn people against Israel, because Iran sees Israel as a nemesis and is fueling this propaganda and fueling this hatred.
Now, you spoke to members of London's Jewish community on Sunday at St John's Wood Synagogue. Tell me how that community is feeling, because as you said, these protests in London, they're massive, they take over the city, and you would imagine a lot of Jewish people wouldn't feel safe being amongst that and leaving their homes in the midst of all those protests.
Yeah, for the past 6 months, London's Jewish community have been frightened to go into central London. They've also been hiding their Star of David necklaces and hiding any indication that they are Jewish, taking their kippah hats off when they're going out in public. And that is really, really sad, because London has an incredible Jewish community, and the fact that they are scared to go into central London, they're scared of being attacked. We've seen many anti-Semitic attacks and outbursts. If somebody carries the Israeli flag when they're walking through Westminster, we see them get attacked and harassed. And it really is sad. And, I spoke yesterday to the Jewish community, just trying to reassure them that there are many British people and, of course, people in Australia and around the world that stand with them. But we need more people to speak up, because right now the Jewish community feels scared. And many of them say they actually feel safer in Israel than they do in the United Kingdom.
Well, you mentioned TikTok and the role it plays in fueling some of this anti-Semitic sentiment. TikTok has removed over 3 million videos to do with the Israeli-Gaza conflict since October 7. But you're a social media expert. You've got a huge following on multiple platforms. Can you tell me whether they've been even-handed in the way they've removed these videos?
Well, we've seen since the October 7th attack, TikTok has been pushing heavily biased content that is in favour of Palestine. So we're seeing a lot of information. We're seeing influencers that have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. These influencers don't even know where Palestine is. They don't even know which river they're chanting about. And it's just really fueling misinformation. And TikTok is promoting these videos on the algorithm, even though they deny that and they try to say that this is what young people are looking for, this is how young people feel. They are undeniably pushing pro-Palestine content, and they're also censoring Jewish voices. So, there are many pro-Israeli accounts that are shadow banned, completely banned. My account was completely banned for a period of time earlier this year, simply because of reports from pro-Palestinian activists. And, I've stopped posting on TikTok. I haven't posted for 3 months because I think, it's owned by China. China is pushing propaganda, and it is a national security threat. And while TikTok may be fun for many young kids and young people, it is a dangerous propaganda tool of the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, you're right there. And the way TikTok looks in China is very different to the way it looks in the West, and that's with good reason. Now, let's talk about Scotland. The true scale of Scotland's new hate crime laws is already being felt. There have been thousands of reports filed since the laws came into effect just on April 1. Police are being swamped with this paperwork, but we're still seeing police out and about and seeming to be policing hate speech in a, uneven manner. At a recent Let Women Speak event in Edinburgh, they were manhandling the pro-women speakers while letting the pro-trans antagonisers run free. There was a fair bit of criticism, Ollie. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, this law is an attack on free speech. There's a very thin line between free speech and hate speech, but this law is already being used to target great women like J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling is the victim of a hate crime here from all of these trans activists and even the Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf, who is constantly attacking her simply because she defends women. So I think it's a total farce. We've seen over 8,000 hate crime reports filed since April 1st. That's one report every minute. What a waste of police time. And it's the fact that police at these this Let Women Speak rally, they take the side of the trans activists. It's okay for a trans activist to attack women. It's okay for them to attack someone like J.K. Rowling. But yet it's not okay for somebody to call them a man. If you're born a man and somebody calls you a man, you could get up to 7 years in jail for misgendering. So there's a total double standard and hypocrisy here. The trans activists can get away with what they want. There are Hamas supporters taken to the streets of Scotland. They can say whatever they want, but God forbid you misgender a trans person. You're going straight to jail, and I think it is a total farce.
Well, J.K. Rowling seems to be doing her best to undermine these Orwellian laws, and more power to her. Ollie, let's talk about Brazil. They've had in recent weeks huge anti-government protests taking place. There wasn't much in the mainstream media, but certainly social media showed huge numbers, as you can see there, taking to the streets. People protesting against the election ban that's been placed on ex-President Bolsonaro. Ex-owner Elon Musk is vowing to fight an order by Brazil's Supreme Court to remove several social media accounts that they deem to be propagating hate speech and false information. He said, "We are lifting all restrictions. This judge has applied massive fines, threatened to arrest our employees and cut off access in Brazil. As a result, we will probably lose all revenue in Brazil and have to shut down our office there, but principles matter more than profit." This is what a real threat to democracy looks like, Ollie, and you've got to congratulate Musk here because he's vowed to fight the aggressive censorship here, and he's saying that the judge is violating the will of the people of Brazil.
Yes, Brazil has become increasingly authoritarian under President Lula's administration. We saw former President Jair Bolsonaro was previously arrested. The Supreme Court has banned him from running for election until 2030. So it's kind of a similar situation to America when they're trying to stop Trump being on the ballot. It's become increasingly authoritarian, and there is huge support for ex-President Bolsonaro. There are also many Brazilians that have been protesting, many millions, and that has largely been ignored by the Brazilian media, and social media has been sharing that information, and that is the reason why Brazil's Supreme Court judge head has been trying to ban influencers that may spread information that the government deems hate speech or fake news. And Elon Musk is a man of principles. He has said that he will defend free speech. He doesn't care about the loss of income from ad revenue. So he really is a hero to many people. And, he is going to challenge this Supreme Court ruling. He's also challenging the Brazilian Attorney General, who is trying to see if they can ban X completely, simply because it gives Brazilians a voice.
And he's advising people to use VPNs to try to get around these really illiberal restrictions. Ollie London, thank you so much for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thanks, a pleasure, Rita.
And that's it from me tonight. Up next is Newsnight. I'll see you at 11 tomorrow. Good night.